Hello there. You must be curious about the bass line for Led Zeppelin's Dazed and Confused as they played it on their 1973 Houses of the Holy tour, as captured in the film and soundtrack of the same name. The song remains the same. Well, I'm Pete. There's Nola. We're here to break this down into manageable, bite-sized portions so you can get through it and put it all together and have a fun time playing one of the most incredible bass lines from a live act that you would want in rock and roll. Jones does everything there is to do basically except slap. He plays fast, he plays slow, he plays like bluesy lines, plays Motowny lines, he plays weird dissonant stuff and different meters, and to top it all off, he plays one of the most iconic bass lines that there is. So, before I get down into all of that stuff, I'm going to take a little tour up to 35,000 feet, give you the overview of Dazed, so you're not so confused. And I'll tell you, it is such an amazing song, and Jimmy Page brought it to Zeppelin from the Yardbirds, and he brought it to the Yardbirds from this guy Jake Holmes, who basically wrote it, and like you would a lawnmower, Page kind of borrowed it, didn't really return it. It's he changed it a lot, and Zeppelin, of course, made it so iconic. But when you listen to like the early version in the '68 Anderson Theater, there's so many ideas that Page already has in place that he introduced to Zeppelin. It's really impressive. And then from those early live versions on, you see how the song progressed because they always experimented with it and they were doing so many different things. It's helpful to listen to different versions of it just to hear how it changed over time. And of course, I like the first version, and that's the song that got me playing bass in the first place. I heard and I was like, what is that sound? I have to make that sound. So that version, of course, is great. And then I like the June 27th, 1969, I think it's the Playhouse Theatre in London. It was for the BBC, but somehow it didn't make it to the official BBC release. But don't worry, it's out there. White Summer is the bootleg, and it's easy to find. It's just amazing. And I liked Going to California, September 14th, 1971. It's sort of them at their blues rocky peak of it. And then, of course, this version, which is a little more structured, a little bit, there's a bit more of the funk element in there that they've been like just devouring by that point. And it's just the song they played the most, and there was a reason for it. So I'm gonna break it down now, and let's get started. So one of the first things is that when you're playing these kinds of things, like especially Jones, it swings. That's why the rhythm section is so great with Zeppelin, is that they weren't stiff and plodding. They had a great bounce to everything they did. And if you're having trouble getting that, one great way to do that is to use a metronome to help you figure it out how to bounce. So like, let's say you do this, just like a groove, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. That stinks because it's not the right way to use the metronome. What you want to do is you want to use the metronome on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it just immediately, you can't help but swing. All right, so you should always use the metronome that way. And for this particular recording, it was interesting getting it done because Zeppelin, as great as they were in the studio and live, when they made this film, they kind of made it themselves, and they weren't really filmmakers. So there's a lot of cuts, a lot of weird edits that they could do in the studio, no problem. But when they were chopping the film together, they really chopped it, and the timing is off, and they zap in some other version here and there, and the speed changes, and they lose a beat on a edit, that kind of thing. So it's a little tricky, but you work through it, and and you get it down, and it really helps your overall playing, your chops, and just your feel. So let's get to it. It starts off with that amazing, iconic bass line, right? That descending chromatic riff. You go from the minor third to the 1, and then from the minor 7th to the 5. Right, over and over. And the thing with that is, like, in the album, it comes off, it's really quick, you know. Maybe a little too fast, but still, by the time it gets to 73 tour, it's very leisurely, spooky. And the thing about it is that, you know, you could really, you don't want to overplay it, but, you know, you could throw in little licks. You know, little things. And it's got it's got that bounce to it. You know, underneath it is the that kind of vibe is happening even when it, you know, he's just playing it straight, but underneath everything is that little groove, and, you know, and it goes through the. And in this version, they throw in some triplets. Just why not? And then, you know, it does that onto the verses, and it gets to that acceleration section, which is when it really starts taking off, and Page just like takes, you know, they've been taxing on down a runway, now Page is off they go, right? So, and Jones and Bono are right there to make it happen. So it's a little minor pentatonic lick. Let's see, how's it go? You're just playing the minor third, the 4th, the 5th, the flat 7, and the root again. I'm just doing it over and over and over and over until it gets to the main part, where it's, you know, it does that some more. And it starts the galloping thing, right? And it basically does that with little variations and things until the end of it. And then it gets into the San Francisco section, which is a... And obviously that whole bit there, and eventually becomes Achilles' Last Stand. But you have you're doing a lot of movement on E minor to C minor, and it's really cool. You know, you can be very lyrical and melodic. There's really no rules. Just hit like the E and the C, like that helps. You know, on the downbeat of 1 on those things, or around there, you know. And that kind of thing. You really just bounce around and have a nice little conversation with the drummer underneath what's happening up front. And you know, and then eventually that calms down and gets you to the bow solo. And out of the bow solo, well, that's when the madness really happens. So maybe I'll do that. I guess I'm going to break this up, put that in part 2.